can you tell us a little bit about how you're using Google Forms for quizzes?
Okay, so I use Google Forms for quizzes periodically, and I create the quiz in Google Forms, and then I post that in my classroom for my students to see. When you do that, then you can set it to grade the quiz, and anything that's an objective answer, the quiz will grade for you, but subjective things you have to come up with some other way to do it. What I like about using that is it dumps it all into one spreadsheet, and I can sit and grade all of it instead of having 150 pieces of paper to grade through. And then I just add things back to it. So you can see here that I have a quiz that I gave to my students over elements in their families. So it's just a basic quiz about the periodic table. And the questions were, all of them in this set were objective, and you can see that I was able to put some pictures on it. Then whenever I went to looking at the subatomic particles, I gave the kids I guess a square off of the periodic table and asked them some questions that referred back to it. And then at the very end, I asked a couple open response questions. And you can see here all the answers were dumped into this spreadsheet. The students' names are over on the left, and the questions appear in the blue here at the top of my screen. And so I just graded these two open responses. I slid the thing over so I could see their responses, right away. And then I highlighted in red if they missed the answer. And so that's the way I would grade it on a piece of paper. And so whenever I came back, I added their scores back over in that column far to the left. If they got both questions right, I added 8 points back to their score. If they only got one, of course, I added 4. And if they didn't get any of the score students, it showed from the computer. And then whenever in Google Classroom, whenever we see this here, I could hit the return button. I'm not going to do that because it'll show you the students' names. But whenever I have that pulled up, I can see what, I can put their grade in it and hit the return button, and it gives them back their scores. And then in Forms also, there was a place after the student has taken it, I'm not sure I can get to the live form. Here under the responses, there was a place where I could release their scores, and so their score would go back. I could click that, and their score would be returned to them in their email, along with a copy of the quiz, so they could see what they missed and what the correct answers were. So then they had a study guide. A lot of times, these kinds of quizzes in the past, I would just give as an oral exam. I'd read the question off, and so the kid would write down his answer, and he wouldn't necessarily have that to come back and study. I really like the way that the scores break down here. I can see a graph on how the kids did. When I get down into the individual things, you can see what, which ones they're missed, what their right answers were, how the students did, and then that helps me to then know what I need to go back and reteach. There was one question toward the end of this quiz that was alarming, the number of questions that were missed. And so I did go back and reteach that, and that question was the difference between mass number and average atomic mass. Here you can see that the most popular answer was the wrong answer. And so I went back to make that distinction with students, and then on their chapter test over this material, they didn't miss it nearly as many times. So I really like that feature.
Okay, can you talk to us a little bit about, just real quickly, how you send these quizzes out to your students?
Okay, that is posted in Google Classroom. Here you can see the quiz reading the table, and the kids would click on this section here, and that would just pull up the quiz. And then to grade it, I just click on View Responses and Sheets, and then it comes right back up for me. And then this was the first time I had an open response on there, and I wondered if the kids would be able to tell, and I've posted a comment that you can see on my screen here asking. And the children, I don't think any of the kids ever answered that on there, but I finally asked somebody in person, and they told me. but they could have responded and answered if they'd seen it, so.
Perfect.
All right, so my newest project that I'm trying with my kids is called an interactive flyer. And I saw this idea on the Apple teacher site where a 5th grade teacher had used it to teach the scientific method. And so I've kind of modified hers to fit with what I'm teaching currently about the periodic table. And I'm going to have my pre-AP kids create an interactive flyer on the periodic table. And my plan is for them to work in groups of 3, and each student would be responsible for one of the following: creating an iMovie about something about the periodic table, one with the using GarageBand, maybe they make a rap or a song, maybe they do a mashup of some sort with the music, where they overplay, where they take a popular song and put their own words into it. That's what I'm trying to say. And then all of that's going to be put into a Keynote or Pages document to turn it into an interactive flyer. And so I'm kind of excited about seeing this project come together, and I hope to have something to share with everyone at the end of the semester. So this is a project that's still in the works, and it will probably get changed along the way as those projects tend to do. So that's the plan. Now, I did develop an online, use Google Forms to make a rubric on this project, and it is actually I used a project that I'd already done, and so I've had my students in the past create a Keynote or a PowerPoint on how to construct a Bohr model. And so I created my form and have it here where I could grade a project, and it's basically on a scale of 1 to 5, did they meet the criteria? And I used it, I collected their email address and I put their names on it, so I have to type that in, and then I just punched the 1 to 5 on how they did, and I included a spot where I could put comments, wonderful, you did a great job, or I could say something along the lines of excellent use of the science material, however your grammar needs improvement, periods go at the end of sentences was something I frequently had to tell the kids. And then when I hit submit, it dumps it into a spreadsheet. And so that spreadsheet, then I can see, and using an add-on called YAMM, yet another mail merge, the YAMM, then what I did was in my email, I set up a form letter type email that had the code in there so that it would pull information from the website and email just that one section to the kid. So this is the equivalent of the kid getting back a paper copy of their rubric, and it would have their grade, and it could have their their grade. This particular project was worth 65 points, so their grade out of 65, and then the percentage of that, I set the spreadsheet up to calculate the percentage, and so then it would email both the raw score and the percentage score back to the student and tell them how they did, plus my comments would go as well, and each student will receive their own rubric in their own email. They won't see everybody's, even though on my screen here, the projects that I have graded so far, you can see how it's set up. I also like that I get a timestamp on when it was submitted, so I know when the kids turned it in, so they can't argue with me about it being late whenever I take off those points and that kind of thing. So I'm really enjoying doing this because then I don't have to have both my computer and a piece of paper on my desk at the same time. I can just grade it from the computer. So if I'm sitting on the couch and my husband's watching NASCAR or whatever, well then, I don't have all this stuff spread everywhere, and it becomes a more focused, easier way to do it. So.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how complicated it was to set this up and how long it took you to learn how to set up your mail merge?
Okay. I think it took me probably about 15 minutes to go through and set it up.
Okay, the first thing that you'll do is you'll create your rubric in Google Forms. You'll then use the online rubric to grade your students. It creates the spreadsheet for you. After that, you'll write your draft email and copy and paste columns from your spreadsheet. You'll then enter the code by surrounding the column names in greater than and less than symbols. You're now ready to send the results to your students.
It was really fairly easy. I can pull up my email here and show you the dummy draft that we set up, so you can see the code was really easy. It just involved copying and pasting and then using these little greater than, less than signs around what I wanted it to quote in the mail merge. So the email gets pulled in automatically whenever I tell it over in the spreadsheet how to do it. And you can see I've just put a generic form letter piece together here. And then the chart that you see is where I copied and pasted it from my rubric. And then I put the little greater than, less than signs around that. And that's telling the spreadsheet to dump the information into the kid's email. And then I've got the spot down here at the bottom. So the text that's outside shows up, and then whatever I put in the comment section will show up underneath where it says comments for teacher or from teacher. And then of course I gave a salutation or I wrapped it up, whatever that's called, thank you, and then my signature at the bottom. So the kids get that, and that's what their rubric would then look like. And again, it just took about 15 minutes to set it up. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.